Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for my next installment of Facebook Live. And I'm doing a series here discussing the healing power of kindness. I've been doing Facebook Lives very consistently since 2020. I really started as a way of sort of trying to help during the COVID crisis. And so I did it daily, basically, for about a year and a half. Then I went to about 3 days a week. And now I do Facebook Lives for about a month or so leading up to an online meditation program that I'm offering as a way of kind of building momentum. And this is the same in that way. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the course, and then I'll get into the topic of the talk today. So, a little bit about myself first. My name is Chris. I'm a longtime meditation practitioner and teacher. I've been practicing for about 40 years, deeply trained in both the Mahayana school of Buddhism and the Theravada school of Buddhism, trained in Tibetan Buddhist meditation, also in Zen, Korean and Japanese Zen. Also trained quite deeply in Theravada and the Burmese style of meditation as well, Vipassana, and so forth. Also deeply studied in Buddhist psychology, the Abhidhamma, and I have a training through Harvard University and the Institute of Meditation and Psychotherapy. And I'm also a certified clinical trauma professional with an emphasis on somatic psychology. So that's a little bit about me. And so the course that I'm offering, it's called The Healing Power of Kindness. And it runs from October 20th to December 22nd, 2025. I'm offering two sections to cater to different time zones. Section A, it runs from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday evenings. That's East Coast time of America. So that's 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. here in Thailand. Now, in Thailand, the clocks don't change throughout the year, so there is a time change, I think, a couple of weeks into this course. So when that happens, it will be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. East Coast time after the times change. Section B, I'm offering on Monday afternoons, 2 p.m. in France. So this is to cater to Europe, also to Asia, but Australia, New Zealand, and Europe mostly. So that's going to be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. in Thailand. If you like an earlier morning on Monday mornings, you could do 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in America as well if you're up for that and that. Yeah. So anyway, go to the website www.suchsweetthunder.org and you can find out more about the course. It's a 10-week long course, and yeah, so plan accordingly. In the course, I'll be offering free one-on-one sessions as a part of the course. There's also lots of guided meditations. There's a community emphasis, so I do take care to cultivate a sort of a community vibe in the course. Everything that I offer is always offered within a secular framework, although my training is in Buddhism primarily. I do my best to offer everything in a non denominational way. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into the topic of the day. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about self compassion here. Self compassion. And this, we will be exploring self compassion in the course. In fact, uh, one of the ways that I'm framing kindness is the practice of offering kindness to challenging aspects of ourself. Kindness to the irritating me, or the annoying me, or the me that's in pain sometimes, or the me that's tense or filled with anxiety sometimes, right? And we take that me and we offer kindness. right? As if we were bringing that part of ourself a gift. And you might kind of get a sense of that now as I'm speaking, right? Maybe even just closing your eyes and feeling into that for a moment. You know, this aspect of myself that I'm not that fond of. What would it be like to bring warmth and well wishes and kindness to that part of us? And so right away we can get a sense of, the awe of compassion. When I turn and offer this challenging part of myself, this warmth of kindness, it's sort of counterintuitive, right? The inner critic wants to wake up, right, and say, hey, you shouldn't do that, or hey, you need to do that better, or whatever it is, right? But we know that we don't learn so easily from a harsh voice, right? We learn much easier from the coach than we do from the critic. So if we can really bring that kindness, that warmth to those aspects of ourself, and I like to place a hand over my heart when I do that. Oh, I can get a feel for that feeling of compassion. It's kind of a softening, a warmth and openness. So in the program, we're going to spend 2 weeks exploring that in particular. That whole idea of offering kindness to aspects of ourselves that we find challenging. But for now, for today's offering, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about self-compassion, and then maybe do a meditation on self-compassion. So I'm defining compassion as the ability to be with another person or our own difficulty, pain, struggle, without falling into reactivity. Now, that reactivity looks different for different people, but some of the common ways that we might react to another in pain or difficulty is we might numb out, right? We just kind of shut down. We're still there physically, but we're sort of disconnected to how we're feeling. That's very common, right? And in that sort of numbness, that disconnect, it's very challenging to be skillful, right? Then we often say things that aren't really related to what the person's struggling with, or, we might try to help the other person not seeing what they're actually needing or asking for, but imagining what we would need in that position and offering that, right? That's very common. That's kind of the confusion between empathy and compassion, right? Well, we're not meeting the present moment with that open, not knowing sense, that curious sense, right? We're meeting the present moment with, I know what this moment needs, let me do that. And that very often creates a disconnect between ourselves and the other person who's struggling. So another way of framing compassion that I find quite helpful, this comes from the Buddhist tradition, is compassion is the heart that trembles in the face of struggle or discomfort or pain, right? And, check it out next time, or as you're listening to me, think of a memory where you were in the company of another person struggling, right? And then holding space for that with non-judgment, right? Offering that kind warmth. What does that feel like? So we get a sense of that. And you might start to feel your heart kind of close down, right? Not going into that numbing out, right? And then we can sort of, okay, recognize that that's there to keep us safe, to help us feel safe. And then we can maybe take a deep breath or two and just softly remind ourselves to open. So there's lots of good reasons why we tend to move in a defensive stance when we're in the midst of struggle, pain, discomfort, whether it's our own or others. You know, when we were a child, right? The first humans that we would have seen in discomfort or stressed would have been our caretakers, right? Probably not because of us, maybe because of some other things, but that's usually our first exposure to stress or discomfort or struggle or pain. But as children, right, our safety, our sense of well being depends on our caretakers being safe and well. So it's very normal for a young child to experience fear or panic or anxiety when our caretakers are in pain or in distress, right? Because that sets off the alarm clock in our brain and our nervous system that something's not right and we need to move something or adjust something to help us feel safe again. So over time, that becomes habitual, right? So what tends to happen then is every time we experience somebody in distress or in pain or in difficulty, we move into a defensive stance, right? Fight or flight. So, and again, this is normal, it's natural, but we can do things to practice um, helping us stay open and compassionate in the midst of challenge. And so the practice that I'm thinking of here is called the 3 pillars of self compassion. And those are the pillars of mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. And I'll just kind of talk through it very quickly and then we'll do a brief meditation on this. So the idea is we're invited in the meditation to bring into the practice some experience that we find we wish had gone differently somehow, some recent experience. Maybe we had an argument with a family member or a coworker. We don't want to use something overwhelming for the practice, especially if this is our first time doing a practice like this. We want to use something that is manageable so we can stay connected to the present moment. So something rather trivial, like a minor argument, or maybe something didn't go quite the way you had hoped it would go, maybe a business meeting or some presentation you were giving or something like that. We bring that into awareness. Then mindfulness, by the way, is this frame of non-judgment and curiosity, right? So we bring this mindful frame to that challenging moment, naming the emotions that are there. So we might name sadness or confusion, anger or fear, or whatever is present in that experience. And in that naming, that sort of allows that non-judgment to be there, right? We're not naming it saying, I wish it wasn't there, right? We were just naming it, allowing it to be there. Then we recognize that indeed all other human beings feel these same emotions from time to time, that these emotions aren't personal, that they're in fact part and parcel to the human condition. And then we offer kindness around the situation that we're working with. And so I like to do that by simply offering myself the question, what would be kind right now? What would be kind right now? And again, if I don't already have my hand on my heart by that point in the practice, I usually put my hand there and I'll just offer that. What would be kind right now? Sometimes just asking that question is the move of kindness. Right? Often when I ask myself that, what would be kind right now? I can feel my nervous system sort of drop a little bit. soften a little bit. And I realize that it's probably because that's a question that I would have liked to have heard a lot more when I was young, right? And maybe some of you feel that way too. What would be kind right now? It's such a lovely question, right? So we ask that of ourselves. What would be kind right here? Maybe it would be kind to sort of imagine or visualize your most wisest, compassionate self showing up, and how would they support you in that challenging situation that you're working with? Or maybe kindness would look like imagining how you would support a friend of yours if you knew they were struggling with a similar situation. How would you support them? And then offering that to yourself. So, a couple of options there. After we go through those three pillars of mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness, we then just inquire, has there been any shift in the situation we chose to work with? That's the last piece. And then we draw the practice to a close. Okay, so we'll do this for maybe 15 minutes or so. So I'll invite us to take a posture that allows us to stay awake and alert and present for about 15 minutes, but not so tight. We want to be soft and relaxed in the practice, but we also want to stay awake, right? And so maybe an upright posture with your back off of the backrest if you're using a chair like I am. Or if you want to stand up and meditate, that's also very legitimate. If you lie down, that's also a wonderful way of practicing, but then I would recommend placing your arm up at a right angle on the elbow. So then when the arm collapses, it'll wake you up like that. Okay, let's go ahead and practice. So I'll ring the bell and I'll guide us in. Enjoy. And so the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. And there are many ways of arriving and connecting to the present moment. And for this practice, let's start by noticing the sounds that are here. And so we're invited to simply become listeners of the present moment. Loud sounds or quiet sounds. The sound of my voice. If you can hear sounds on my side of the experience, you might notice the sound of bird songs, the sound of my voice, the gentle murmur of an appliance, a conversation unfolding nearby, the occasional car or truck passing by or airplane flying overhead. You might notice how listening requires no effort, that these sounds simply appear and they're known. And so we can remain at rest. Sounds appear, they might stay for a while, and then they disappear. And then whenever you notice the mind wandering during the practice, you could label that thinking, letting the distraction go, and kindly returning back to the practice. So not making the thoughts into a problem, just noticing and returning. And so while we're here resting, listening to the present moment, the invitation then is to kindly and gently bring awareness to the body, perhaps noticing the contact of the body against the cushion or chair. Really exploring the seat against the seat of the chair. And if you're using a backrest, the back against the backrest. Maybe there's a texture there, soft or smooth or coarse or hard, rough. And if you'd like, maybe inviting the body to soften a little bit further into the chair or cushion. In a sense, letting any internal habitual bracing that's happening relax and let go. We might also notice the sensation of clothing resting against the skin of the body. And maybe inviting the muscles underneath those sensations to relax and soften, rest. And while we're here resting and connecting to the present moment, the invitation then is to gently and kindly bring into awareness some recent experience where you felt some struggle. Some recent experience that went maybe the way you thought it wouldn't go or hoped it wouldn't go. As far as challenge goes, we'd want this to be about a 3 on the scale of 1 to 10. Not something overwhelming. Some situation where we can feel the sting, the wish that we're different somehow. And you might have more than one situation coming to mind that fits that description, and that's very normal. But for our practice, it's helpful just to pick one situation to work with. We can always come back again and use a different situation next time. And so while holding this challenging situation lightly in awareness, we can begin to name the emotions that are there. So you might name anger or frustration, sadness, craving, longing, confusion. Just naming what's there in that frame of non-judgment and care. As we name the emotions, in a sense, we're saying, yes, you can stay, you belong here. Acknowledging that each of these emotions that we experience are universal. that in fact it is these emotions that make us human, and that all 8 billion other people in the world feel these same emotions from time to time. And we might inquire here, what would be kind around this situation we're working with? What would be kind? So if you like, you might place a hand over the heart as we're asking this question. What would be kind right now? Maybe just offering ourselves a few phrases of kindness like, may I feel safe. May I feel safe in the midst of this challenge. Or may I be happy in the midst of life's difficulties. May I be happy. May I find ease in the midst of life's unfolding. May I find ease. Or perhaps inquiring, if my closest friend was struggling with a similar situation, how might I support that person? And then offering that to yourself. And then perhaps in the next breath or two, we can begin to allow any images that might be in the mind's eye to fade and dissolve. Taking a few moments to notice if there's been any shift or change in the situation you chose to work with. There may or there may not be, and there's no wrong or right about that. We're simply surveying the terrain that we've just crossed. If you're using that move of compassionate support with a hand over the heart, I'd invite us to place our hands back on our legs or by our side, wherever's comfortable. Taking a few moments to notice the sounds of the present moment, quiet sounds or loud sounds. Sensations arising from the feet, the hands, the weight of the body against the cushion or chair. Sensations arising from the shoulders, the top of the head. And so I'll ring the bell and bring us back into a conversational space. Yeah, so that was the 3 pillars of self-compassion. I hope that was helpful. Just to mention, that those 3 steps, if you will, the mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness, That can be done as a meditation, the way we just did, and it also can be done informally in your moment to moment, day to day experience. So, for example, let's say I'm walking down the street and somebody says something really mean to me, right? So, first I'll just say first I put my hand on my heart, always. Why not? It's so accessible and it feels good. So, I'll put my hand on my heart and I'll say, ouch, ouch. So, that's the mindfulness piece, right? I'm naming the difficulty, the pain of the moment. Hand on the heart, ouch. All human beings feel pain from time to time. What would be kind right now? And that's it. And so again, that takes 10, 15 seconds, but it can kind of create a bit of a gap in between the stimulus and response, right? And Viktor Frankl, the neuropsychologist, or I guess psychologist rather, Viktor Frankl, the psychotherapist and Holocaust survivor, his great quote from Man's Search for Meaning, um, in between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our choice. And in that choice point lies our potential for growth and for freedom. That's a paraphrase, it's not the exact quote. And that's the idea, right? The contact was the insult, right? Then hand on the heart, ouch. That creates a way of feeling that space, right? That pause. Ouch. All human beings feel ouch from time to time. What would be kind right now? So then I might just be able to look at the other person and say, wow, I can tell you're pretty upset right now. Is there something I can help you with? Right? Catching them off guard with kindness in that way. Or, it might be the kind of thing where, I need to set a boundary, right? Sometimes setting a boundary can be very kind. I appreciate if you don't talk to me that way. Maybe we can circle back around and finish this conversation another time. Something like that. Yeah. So I hope this has all been helpful. For me, self-compassion has been just super important in the past year or so as the world is going through so many dramatic changes. It seems like just such a helpful medicine right now. So please use it liberally if you like it. And these practices are designed to be done, over months and years or even a lifetime. So, if you didn't feel much compassion as we move through that meditation, that's quite normal. Feel free to come back to the recording or go to my podcast page. That's Such Sweet Thunder Meditations. Lots of self-compassion practices there. Or you can message me and I'll send a link out to a practice if you'd like. So that's all I've got to say here today. I hope to see you all on the course. Please do sign up. Registration is open now. It's a 10-week course. It runs from October 22nd to December 19th, if I'm not mistaken. But check the dates and times out on my website, suchsweetthunder.org. It's called The Healing Power of Kindness. It's a 10-week online meditation immersive program. Be well, everyone. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you all next time. Thanks, and I'll ring the bell to close us out.